Latvia Weekly, a look at the Rīga City Council election, Part 2. Labdien visiem once again. So for those of you who are watching this on Facebook Live, welcome back. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube or listening to your podcast apps, we are here for Part 2 of our look at the different parties that are running for the Rīga City Council election. So I'm Joe Horgan once again. Otto Tabuns right next to me.
Hello, everyone.
Ready to go for Part 2? So what we did in the first part is we looked at all of the parties that are currently already in Rīga City Council, or at least the ones that won in the last election, and we went through them. Now we are going to be looking at the parties that are on the outside looking in, the ones that are not in Rīga City Council right now and would like to get there. And there are basically kind of two main types of parties. So one is parties that are successful in, or more successful in national politics, but don't really have big inroads in Riga for various reasons, which we'll discuss. And the other one, which are more common, are these little tiny parties that always get somewhere between 0 and 1.5% of the vote. And sometimes they are, in many elections. Sometimes they're in just one election. And there are many of them for different reasons. We will get into those as well. So what we did in the last episode was we went through the parties in order of their electoral success in 2017. So since these parties did not have electoral success in 2017, we are just going to go through them in the order that they are on the ballot. So when those of you who are voting in the Rīga City Council election go and go to the election, you will see them most likely in this order, from what I understand. And just a quick note, by the way, we didn't mention this in the first episode. If you are either a Latvian citizen or an EU citizen, well, okay, if you're an EU citizen, you're also a Latvian citizen, you do have the right to vote in this election if you are registered as declared as a resident of Riga. So you should have probably already gotten a little card with some information on it, but you can go to the official election committee's website, cvk.lv, and you will find more detailed information there. But it's pretty simple. I voted in the last Riga City Council election. I will obviously not be voting in this election because I am a resident of Jelgava. Very thankfully, I love living here. But for those of you who have the fun of living in Riga, then
such as myself,
yes, exactly, like Otto, then you should go exercise your constitutional right to do so. Otto, let's get into the second half of the party. So the first one that you will see on the list, and this is the very first party on the list. So this is Political Party Alternative, which is interesting. So this is literally how it is on the election sheet. Politiskā Partija, which is like political party, and then Alternative, which is basically the English word, because how would you use alternative in Latvian? How would it be as a alternatives, right, or alternativa?
Yes, so it would be alternatives or alternative or alternativi.
Yeah.
It is interesting that officially their party name is put as this international version. At the same time, in the program that I read, it is spelled in the Latvian manner as alternativa. So on the one hand, it is a signal as to what the name suggests they are to the political scene. On the other hand, it might also indicate their approach with regard to the language policy.
Well, so there are a number of parties that have called themselves alternative in the past, and so this again, this falls under one of the ones that probably is kind of a minor party. I do not foresee massive electoral success with these guys, but you never know. But they have been polling in pretty small digits here so far. So anything else you'd like to mention about them before we?
Certainly.
Yeah.
So with regard to policies, if we look at their policies that they would like to follow, then it is clear which would be the core of electorate that they would be looking at. So they have prioritized roads, bridges, and parking, and specifically the infrastructure of micro districts, announcing that Riga is the Riga of micro districts, and the first thing that the Riga starts with are the micro districts, meaning the residential areas that were mostly built during the Soviet occupation, that would have the multi-story apartment buildings where I would say, as we discussed, half or the majority of the citizens of Riga would live.
Yeah, and believe it or not, these are actually the most densely populated parts of Riga. So, for example, like Portfiums, Zemnieku. So, when you're driving from another city into Riga, you're driving through. They're called microregions, but they're pretty big. And they're the ones where they have those big Soviet buildings, as Otto mentioned. So it's interesting here. Riga is the Riga of the microregions. When you go through some of them, for example, Porfiums, Plaunieki, a lot of the sidewalks and roads are not so nicely renovated. I hear foreigners all the time when they're in the center of Riga say, "Oh, everything's so clean, everything's so nice, everything's so well renovated." Well, yeah, in the very center, but not when you go out into the district. So it's interesting that that is the electorate that they're going for, because it's always been surprising for me how little how few bones have been thrown to the people where they actually live, not just where they work.
Exactly. And so no wonder that air quality and noise pollution have been also an issue that they have raised, and so have been the issues of real estate tax benefits and public transit discounts, because of course, as our frequent co-host Carlis Strips knows, if you live, for example, in Porciums, then to reach the center of Riga you would have to use public transit unless you have your own car, because it is far enough. So it is more than approximately like 5 kilometers or like approximately 3 miles. So not something that everyone would be able to go just by walking. They have also indicated their interest in increasing the resources for public housing, the courtyard renovation that of course would involve the buildings that we just discussed, as well as the playgrounds and sports facilities. They have also not forgotten the issue of kindergartens and support family, and specifically have indicated additional support to the role of Russian language in the work and everyday life of the Riga municipality.
Mm-hmm. Before we go on, Otto, did any party in their platforms take an anti-family stance that say that families are bad and that they should they should not be thought of at all? Was there any parties that took an anti-family stance?
So an anti-family stance, perhaps not, as we see 10 out of the 15 have included the question of kindergartens that would be important for all families with small children. And also, if I count now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 have also specifically talked about different family support measures, and also 10 parties have included the question of benefits that also would involve either, let's say, support for mothers, for children, for elderly. So all in all parties have not forgotten this issue.
Yeah. That was again just a bad joke on my part. But
no, but sometimes you would have the fringe parties that would have a very interesting and peculiar policies. We did have like the Fools Party, like you would have also like in many other European countries, you have like this one party that just tries to make like fun of all of it, but it does not seem to be the case here, especially if we're talking about 1 billion euros, which is the budget of the Riga City Council. So not a thing to fool around with, hopefully.
So anyway, the next party which we have to talk about, speaking of comedy and jokers, because this party was founded by basically an actor who had done some comic roles in the past. This is KPV LV. He also this was the project of Mr. Artis Kaimiņš. He also has a kind of a comedy radio show as well, where he kind of makes fun of different guests and politicians to come on. This is one of the most fascinating parties of the last few years. Probably is the most fascinating party of the last few years. So what happened was this started out as one of those kind of fringe parties, that was started by Mr. Artis Kaimiņš, who was he came into Latvian politics on Latvijas Reliģiju apvienība. He left in a very messy divorce. He founded this party KPV, which stands for KPV LV, who owns the state. Very populist, very anti-establishment rhetoric at the time, and they used a slash and burn political campaigning style, which had never been seen in Latvian politics, pretty much since the reestablishment of independence, where he was live streaming, sessions of Saima, showing different politicians who had fallen asleep, and really they captured a lot of the public's imagination. at the time, and they blazed into Saima with 16 seats, which was tied for second place after Saskaņa, of course, and they tied with Jaunā Partija. Since then, things have not quite been so rosy for them. They've lost quite a few members, including their prime minister candidate, Mr. Aldis Gobzems, who we could do an entire episode about, probably, and his his political background. And Mr. Kaimiņš has been more or less kind of sidelined from leadership, and it is a very interesting kind of thing right now in politics. And this is the first kind of major. The first litmus test that they had was the European Parliament election, which they did not do very well in. And this party did exist in the last previous Riga City Council election, but even in the national election, they did very well in some of the smaller cities, some of the bigger towns, further out in the countryside, and generally, even in the best case, their base of support has never really been Riga. So how have they tried to capture the Riga voters' imagination with their party platform and policies, Otto?
Well, they have tried to play the card that has usually worked very well for them previously. That is the question of citizen involvement that they have promised should they get a position at the table in the municipal council. And it is interesting that they haven't touched very much at all the issues of transit, environment, or identity, which is also an important thing to mention. Perhaps for them trying to avoid that bear trap and trying to cover as much as of the population, as much of the electorate as they possibly can.
Yeah.
Out of the management points, they have not touched the issue of anti-corruption or gambling, but they have certainly outlined the importance of increased policing. With regard to taxes and benefits, they have outlined the real estate tax and the increase of general benefits. Also, additional support for public housing, sports facilities, and of course all of the measures with regard to family support, including kindergartens, and also support for senior citizens. With regard to culture, they haven't forgotten that, and it's also interesting that this is one of the three parties that have specifically mentioned energy policy as an important aspect of their plan for Riga. So interesting, both the issues that they have covered and also that the ones that they have avoided, perhaps in trying to get the same luck as they did previously with what some have called a more populist streak in our political scene.
Yeah, but as we've mentioned, in the previous episode, a lot of the political parties are less, popular because of their specific ideology and more because of the politicians who are in there. And, KPV LV, they had the twin stars of Aldis Gobzems and Artis Kaimiņš, who are both extremely controversial, but have devoted followers. And neither of them are really associated with the party anymore. It's hard for me to imagine that they're going to do extremely well based on this platform without these big superstars. But we will have to see. They're definitely one to keep an eye on. Next, we have Jaunā Saskaņa, which is New Saskaņa. Does that sound kind of familiar? So, again, so Saskaņa, we talked about in the previous election, in the previous episode, they have been, the number one vote getter in Riga city politics and also national politics for, the last decade. And there was another party called Vienoti, which was also a very powerful Latvian party that changed its name to Jaunā Vienoti, which is New Unity. So is this the same party, Otto, as Saskaņa? Have they just changed their name and put new in front of them?
Well, I have to say that no, it is not. So this time it is not the image change such as it has been for the Unity and New Unity. Here it is a different party and is not connected legally or administratively with the Harmony or Concord party at all.
But speaking of legally, Saskaņa, I think, made illegal. They tried to bring this to court over this naming issue because, for those of you who've played fantasy football before, one very sneaky strategy that you can do, when there's a player that you want to take, you take a player that has just the same name, like another John Smith, who, instead of being like the star quarterback is, some like random like kicker for, like third string kicker on another team, and you get somebody to take him by mistake, and they're like, so this is the kind of same thing here. This is an extremely dirty trick, but I don't know. They did this also also in the previous election, and it did not go very well. There weren't a bunch of people who voted for Jaunā Saskaņa. So, so what if somebody votes for Jaunā Saskaņa? What are they voting for, Otto? What can we see on their official platform?
So they have been very vocal about anti-corruption, about the real estate tax and public transit discounts that should be kept. Also, public housing and courtyard renovation has also been a major issue for them. They have not forgotten family support, even though they do not mention kindergarten specifically, and have not forgotten seniors. If we look at identity, it is interesting that it is one of the two parties that has specifically, one of the two parties that has specifically mentioned both Latvian and Russian language, both in providing the education in state language, and at the same time giving the liberty for families or for children to pursue, let's say, education, the bilingual education in Russian. So that would be like a step back in education policy that it has been previously.
Yeah.
Then they have not forgotten the question of heritage, the cultural heritage, and the need to preserve it in the sense that they are against tearing down any kind of monuments, not specifying any for, let's say, any political or ideological reasons. There are two other parties that were more specific about this, but we could perhaps understand what they are talking about, specifically the monument for Soviet victory in the part of victory.
Yeah, I mean, just for people who aren't familiar, so we talked in the last episode about this 9th of May celebration that celebrates, for some people, the end of World War II, the victory over Nazism. For some people, the Soviet occupation. It's a very controversial day, and it happens at a very controversial monument, which was erected towards the end of the Soviet occupation. On the other side of the Daugava River, in Agenskalns, and it is this massive monument. There's a pool there, and it's in what's called Victory Park, Uzvaras Parks, which was originally, created before the Soviet occupation. It was the victory, over, the Latvian War of Independence, and it's still, it's still considered the Victory Park. It hasn't been renamed, and it's, considered again the victory of the Latvian independence. There's many people who want it torn down, but it's protected in different foreign treaties, and also it would if it ever was torn down, that would cause huge social unrest. So. That is
whatever that might be. If we talk about the new Saskaņa, the Jaunā Saskaņa, some policies that really do make them stand out are their interest in establishing municipal pharmacies. That would, in their opinion, decrease the prices for drugs, and also also their policy with regard to income tax, and specifically exemptions for income tax, which I would have to remind is a national policy rather than the municipal one. So that is also one thing. On the one hand, well, it may be very impressive if the municipal parties feel that they might have this influence then to impact national policy decisions. At the same time, we have to remember that there are specific functions that the government does, such as the tax policy, and then the role that the municipal government has, certainly not in crafting the tax policy. In some cases, they have some rights to deal with some exemptions, which is the case for real estate tax. But let's not forget what is and what is not the role of the city government.
Exactly. So moving on now. So this is a name, for those of you who are familiar at all with Latvian politics, that you have heard before, more often in an acronym, ZZS. So this stands for the Zaļo un Zemnieku Savienība, the Greens and Farmers Union, or in English it usually gets translated into Union of Greens and Farmers. This is one of the most interesting and most controversial parties in Latvian politics. So this is a union of two major parties and also a few smaller constituencies that are regional. So the Latvian Farmers Party, we'll start with, they are a party that has existed since before the Latvian Republic existed, and they were the major kind of political force in the early days of the Latvian Republic back before the Soviet occupation. Most of the kind of major presidents and prime ministers and everything came from this party. Obviously with exceptions, and they are a party that basically kind of reestablished in the 90s. and they have always had a major base of power kind of further out in the countryside of Latvia because they are the Farmers' Party. And they're never a party that has done particularly well within Riga. Then the Latvian Green Party was established in the early 90s. And although they, until recently, were a member of the European Green Party, the word green is more about the color of their, the color of their logo rather than their actual policies, because they have been, when you think of green politics, that is not usually the politics that the Latvian Green Party has. They call themselves green conservatism, but especially since they joined together with ZZS, actual European Greens, when they see their policies, they're generally not very happy with them. They were basically kicked out of the European Green Party, and they said good riddance also when they were kicked out.
Well, certainly there are compromises that one has to have, especially if Greens try to make a coalition with the farmers. At the same time, I have to mention that at least for this program, they have tried to include quite a number of green policies. So perhaps this is a response to the criticism that they have received. That has been the question of air quality and parks and trees. And also they have not forgotten the issue of bike lanes, also roads and bridges, and the issue of parking, which also would they improve the overall traffic in the city. Then they have not looked at anti-corruption very much, and I will.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Yes, but they have indicated the importance of policing and the increasing of policing, such as several other parties have done. Then, if we look at the taxes and benefits, of course, it's their position. They have a position on real estate tax, on increasing benefits, and keeping the public transit discounts. And so they have also a number of policies with regard to public housing, the courtyard renovation, and apartment building renovation. It is interesting also with regard to economy. They have put investments, entrepreneurship, and tourism as their priorities there, and have also pledged to support all kinds of family support measures, the question of kindergartens, and also support to seniors. One thing that makes them stand out is their support specifically for increased palliative care, so the care for people in the period of life when they have, let's say, a terminal condition. And so that is something that is a big issue for Latvian healthcare, and something that certainly would address an important enough auditorium, an important enough audience among the voters. One other thing that also makes them stand out is support for science, that specifically they're pledging some money to if they get into an important enough position in the municipal council.
And so, again, going back to the issue of corruption, and again, why this party's been considered so controversial. So one of the major leaders of this party, and somebody who's kind of been seen as like the overlord of this party for much of the last 20 years, has been Ivars Lembergs. He is the mayor of Ventspils, which is a city in the northwest. It used to be the largest port in Riga, in Latvia. Now is the second largest port. But he is fairly notorious for being having alleged corruption schemes. He has been under investigation and also in a court case for over a decade now. And just last year, he was finally basically taken down by agents of the U.S. Treasury Department, and basically for links with all kinds of very nefarious international schemes.
And like to clarify, like by taking down specifically, we are talking about sanctions that were applied
so he was
instead
saying,
of extrajudicial operations.
No. It wasn't like some kind of like El Chapo type thing. No.
Yes,
No. Yeah. So he got sanctioned.
Let's be clear about that.
Yeah. No, thank you very much, Otto. Yeah. No. So he got sanctioned by the U.S. and now he is basically slowly getting locked out of power. At least that's what it seems like. and plus, I mean, he's getting a bit older these days, and I don't know how much longer he would have been in Latvian politics. But so we've called this the Godzilla Party before. Because Godzilla is one of these creatures that can take a hit and go down and then come back a few years later and like, oh my gosh, just as strong as ever. And also Godzilla, sometimes green as well. So that's the reason why I call them Godzilla. They did not so well in the last national election because they. Again, we're under a bunch of, fresh corruption allegations, this and that. And also the previous government was run by a prime minister from ZZS, and he was not particularly popular at that time. Again, I predict that ZZS is going to be back stronger than ever in a couple of years from now, as they always somehow seem to do. But in this particular election, again, they've never had Riga as a major base of power. I don't see them really changing that this time around. But I don't know. How do you see it, Otto?
Well, certainly they have found some niches in their program, such as Saskanya has done, for example, by announcing their experience like during crisis, and perhaps also the position of sitting in opposition nationally might also help. Also the question of protest vote and everything, but certainly it will be challenging for them, and we'll have to see how they go. Yeah.
Moving on. So another very interesting party which has been around in Latvian politics for quite some time now. So this is Latvian Russian Association, Latvijas Krievu Savienība. So although Saskaņa gets the label usually in the major media as the quote-unquote Russian party, this party really is the quote-unquote Russian party because they specifically in their name, but also in their platform, traditionally, they have focused specifically on major hot-button issues that apply specifically to the Russian-speaking minority. And their major star, Tatiana Zhranka, is in European Parliament. Whenever you hear about some, like in different news, this European party, a European parliamentarian, completely agrees with Putin on this. It's 9 times out of 10 probably going to be her. She, is definitely a very controversial figure. She has many supporters, many people who don't like her very much. But again, they have done less well when it comes to local and national politics since Saskaņa, really kind of came together. And I've been a little bit surprised that they haven't been able to do a little bit better than previously. Now that Saskaņa has, at least officially kind of moved away from some of these more hot button issues. But let's take a look at their platform, Otto.
Yes.
How do you?
Because here it probably it is now one of the only parties, or probably one of the 2 parties that strictly would represent a position or the interests of one specific ethnic group. Probably I would be able to argue that. At the same time, perhaps the success of this or the other party shows the validity of identity politics nowadays and how strong it may be in the political race of today. If we look at their program, that's certainly a key part of what they are standing for. That is the question of the role of the Russian language. That is the question of the micro districts, where you would also at least historically, you had more people living there who had Russian as their first language.
Which is also because, a lot of the people who moved to Latvia from different parts of the Soviet Union, who are, obviously Russian-speaking because they moved from Russian-speaking parts of the Soviet Union, a lot of these districts were built, specifically with those people in mind, because that's where a lot of Riga's population boom came during Soviet time. So there's a historical reason for that.
Exactly. So they got a priority when standing in a row for an apartment. Yeah. They have covered extensively the identity part, and as I mentioned, if we talk about cultural heritage, they specifically are against taking away the monument for a Soviet victory, and would also be interested in getting resources to renovate it. So that is a specific point of what they have in mind. They also have covered the issues such as other parties for public housing and courtyard renovation and apartment building renovation, the real estate tax benefits and public transit discounts, and they also share the position of Jaunā Saskaņa and the position of Vienoti Latvijai, which is another party that we will deal with later on, about the policy on income tax and exemptions, so which also would be a national policy and something that they would then have to find allies in the national parliament to deal with. So question whether they would be able to do this from the municipal position. But of course they have not forgotten the issues of accessibility, bike lanes and roads, the issue of parking, which is especially important for the micro districts, and have extensively talked about environment, as well as the issue of pets, especially what happens with stray pets. That was one of the most memorable lines of the programs that I read, that the lives of Riga cats matter too, which is a policy stance that they have in their official program.
But Riga is a cat-obsessed city. One of the reasons why Mr. Ushakov's kind of captured the public imagination was because he had pet cats living in City Hall, which, whenever there was different political cartoonists, he always got caricatured as a cat. And when you look, in any of the districts of Riga, even in the center, you see people build these little houses for the stray cats. So they're very well taken care of in Riga. So if you are a stray cat looking for a new place to live, Riga might be a good place for you, and maybe you will vote for Latvijas Krievu, Savienība.
Yeah, or one of the other two parties who certainly will represent your interests as well.
Yes, which you just mentioned one of them right now, Partya Vinoti, Latvijai. So aside from cat lives, what else do we see in the platform of this party, Otto?
So if we look at the transit, they have been specifically active on trains, which is the key of their transit policy, which of course may sympathize to us possibly.
Yes, we are big fans of the train transportation, not big fans of the bus lobby, as people know.
Exactly. So it seems that Vienoti Latvija is certainly not dealing with any kind of bus lobby.
Yeah.
Then, of course, they have been very vocal about the real estate tax, the benefits and social services, and the apartment building renovation, which is specific policy with regard to housing. The two other policies that they have been very specific about is the question of income tax and the exemptions, or the income tax policy, which I have to remind again is a national policy, and also the point about school curriculums, which also makes them stand out from the other parties, for them wishing to change and improve school curriculums to apparently improve the quality of education in their mind, which I would also assume would be national competence rather than municipal, but certainly if they would get in, that would be something that they would have to work with the national government about.
Yeah, and that's something that we're already going through right now. We're going through a revamping of the national curriculum, so that's not something like in America. Each district really basically has leeway over their curriculum and everything. That's not the case in Latvia whatsoever. We've got a couple more left. So the next one is Nacionālā Savienība TAISNīGUMS. So this is like the National Alliance for Justice. How would you translate this?
Yes, I would use the same terms, and I think that the title also explains their ideological position, and as they explain in their program, they are nationalist, and their priority is the interest of the ethnic Latvians, which is what their program tells us. They do cover issues such as transit, specifically about the bike lanes and roads and bridges and parking. From taxes and benefits, they do not forget the real estate tax and the discounts in public transit. From the housing, they do have a policy on extension of public housing, and from economy, they talk about employment and investment. Here, I also have to say that they have a specific position with regard to immigration and with regard to foreigners, such as expats, as would be many of our listeners. One of their specific policies is to limit the immigration and limit the opportunities for people from other countries. One specific measure that they have included is an foreigners tax, which in their program would be 150 euros a month per each foreigner. So that could be apparently a way for them how to gain money for some other policies in Riga, which would also include the demolition of the Soviet Victory Monument, rightly in opposition of the Latvian-Russian Union.
So do they mention their platform? Are when they're talking about their foreign tax or immigration, are they talking about EU nationals or just third-party nationals?
Well, they talk about third-party nationals.
Third country, sorry.
Third country nationals. At the same time, if they talk about like a foreigner tax, probably, we might have to clarify what do they mean by that. Probably they might not be willing to have immigration from third countries, but the other foreigners that are here perhaps would be subject to this tax that they have in mind. At the same time, they talk about citizen involvement and perhaps more about the locals that are already here. And also what was very interesting, similarly to the Jaunā Saskaņa pledge to establish a municipal pharmacy, the National Union for Justice is willing to establish a municipal bank, which would then manage all the transactions, payments for utilities and stuff like that, apparently to make it less expensive than using other commercial banks. So that's their program for you.
Huh. Well, moving on, we've got two left, and one is the Action Party, Rīcības Partija. This one is one that I have seen in previous elections as well. Is this? I should have asked you this before you went. Is this the one that's connected with the guy on the billboard in Sigulda, where it's the guy who says "Don't give up"? Because I know there's this billboard when you go through Sigulda. It's this doctor, and it says underneath, "Don't give up." And he's connected with one of these parties. I thought it was Rīcības Party, but
we'll have to
double
that.
check. Yeah.
But one thing that Rīcības Partija is connected with, I think it also is one of these smaller parties that also have some previous politicians and also some people who would like to become politicians but have not been such before. Specifically in their program, with regard to transit, their top priority is parking. With regard to management, they are in favor of gambling limitations. They have not covered environment at all, but have talked extensively about specific benefits, public transit discounts, and social services. With regard to housing, they haven't forgotten public housing and courtyard renovations. And talking about family, they have included the question of family support. Also, they have not forgotten the issue of cultural heritage and the issues of healthcare. And they also are one of the three parties that specifically deal with issues of pets and walking facilities for pets. It is also interesting with regard to heritage. That was also one thing that stood out for the Action Party, is that if I remember correctly, they were in favor of getting rid of all monuments in connection with the revolution of 1905, World War I, and World War II, despite of their ideological alignment. So that would include, for example, the Brethren Cemetery in Riga and other, and I would think that that would also include the Monument of Freedom, because if we remember correctly, it was also dedicated remembering our freedom fighters for a war of independence. So certainly something out of the usual orbit.
Yeah, doesn't strike me as a very kind of general coherent set of policies, but you
quite
never
an
know.
action. So,
but it just shows. I mean, there is a party in this election for just about anyone, I would say. When it comes to these mishmashes, we have one more party left, and this is called Centra Partija or Centra Partija, and this translates basically into the party of the center. So you would expect to hear some very centrist policies, some very kind of generalist. Is this actually a centrist party, or is this another kind of interesting naming scheme?
Well, they call themselves a centrist, but their policies, and I think also in their program, they're center-right, conservative in many aspects. For example, they would be in favor of banning the LGBT pride in Riga. So that is one of the more specific social or identity policies that they have.
Which I just want to mention for people who are new to Riga, that has in the past been a major issue because gay rights are in America, in Latvia, where they were in America, for example, in the late 80s or kind of early 90s, where people are starting to kind of think about these things. But pride parades have been a major topic of contention and election issues as well.
Yeah, but it's interesting enough that it is only this party that has taken it as a specific issue for the election.
Because it's much less of an issue now than it was like 10 years ago, for example.
Exactly. Also, with regard to transit, they are the only party that have considered introducing boats or ferries as a transit solution in Riga, for example, connecting Vecmilgrāvis and Ilģuciem, so the neighborhoods that would from which it would take approximately 30 to 40 minutes to get to the center.
That's actually kind of an awesome idea, especially from Boulder, for example, to the center. But I'm wondering how many people commute from Ilģuciems to Vecmilgrāvis. I can't imagine there's more than 10 or 20 people who do that every day.
Well, probably more. Well, you have a lot of industrial objects in Vecmilgrāvis, such as Aldaris and other companies, and Ilģuciems does provide available housing more than let's say Center does. At the same time, that's certainly an issue that has been raised previously, and this is one party that has it as a key policy for their transit. Then they would also like to slash the gambling venues in Riga, and also would be in favor in courtyard renovation, building more playgrounds and sports facilities, especially for youth, and are strong on employment and entrepreneurship. So that's in 2 episodes, the short gist of the programs that you can also find on the official page of the Central Election Committee.
Yes, absolutely. So that just about does it for now. So as we mentioned on LatviaWeekly.com, Otto sometime in the next couple of days is going to slave away and digitalize. Do you want to show it on the camera what it looks like for those of you who are watching? I tried to do it like the old style, something almost as we did in high school with teacher Miss Smiltane. Shout out to my colleague Gunnar Smiltane if you're listening.
Exactly, and during the politics class we did things similar to this, and I would say that this exercise also will probably help me to decide which party I will vote for, because I have not decided it yet. So I'm one of the 20 to 40% who still have to decide, and hopefully this episode and our discussions and talks will help both me and also all of you to certainly decide to vote and help to decide which party to vote for.
Yeah, and by the way, for those of you who can vote in this election, I get into big arguments with people about this all the time, but I am a firm supporter of voting for really the party that you actually believe in. So I hate this idea where people say that you should not vote for this party because you're throwing your vote away. Any party should try to get everyone's votes. They should convince you why you should vote for them, not why you should not vote for other people. So really, there's so many parties here. Hopefully there will be one that you want to vote for. In the previous election, there was far less parties. There was something like 8. Definitely less than 10. So this is the most parties that there have been in quite some time. Hopefully there's one that you feel better about, more than the other ones. There's probably not a single party that you love, or maybe there is, I don't know. But definitely, follow your conscience when you vote, because then you will never regret it.
Exactly. And I think that we need a good coalition, and especially after looking at these policies, probably there are some better ones, some not so good ones, and some pretty crazy policies.
Yeah.
So in that regard, that's one of the benefits of our parliamentary political system, that it is not that one party takes it all and runs away with it, that we actually have a coalition, and they have to compromise and find solutions that suit the most people possible.
Yeah, and as Otto mentioned, we'll get into this in one of our upcoming episodes because, again, this is a series. We're not done on this because there's so much to talk about. The way Riga City Council works is like in a national parliament, so it's a coalition of parties. So it's not just like the party that gets 25% comes in first place, then they have the mayorship and everything, and that's it. No, they have to negotiate a coalition, and so it ends up always being a bunch of parties that kind of come together, or at least Saskanya, they were able together with Gotskopot Riga to get more than 50% the last few times, but even they were a coalition basically. Even Saskanya itself, started out as a coalition of different parties. So anyway, we will be back in the next couple of weeks to talk about the answers to your questions, which the parties will have hopefully graciously answered. We will also talk a little bit about how Riga City Council actually works and how the structure is, so that not just who you're voting for, but what their jobs will actually be, what their responsibilities actually are compared to the national government, stuff like that. And then we will also be analyzing the course of the election, how it has gone, how the rhetoric has gone, and everything like that. So we will be back very soon. We will also, at least I will be back with Carlos Strapes on Tuesday to talk about the things that have happened throughout the week. And Otto and I will be back here next Thursday. So anything you'd like to say before we go, Otto?
Well, tune back with us the next time, and let's try to make the best out of all of this.
And for those of you who have not subscribed to our Facebook page or our YouTube channel, please go do that. On our Facebook page, we have Stories of the Day every single day, so you will be able to keep up to date more often. And until next time, everyone, Visu Labo VCM.
Vislabo.